Right, good morning everybody. I've just been told that a good event always starts on time, and we're about 3 minutes late, so I hope that's not an indicator of what you're about to receive. But good morning and welcome to all of our distinguished speakers, delegates, and importantly our exhibitors and sponsor today, which is CLD Fencing. These guys have made today possible, obviously for this free event, and I hope that you enjoy the proceedings between now and 3:30. We'll move after the main event into a drinks reception, which is to celebrate an announcement we'll make a bit later in the day. So I'll keep you in suspense about that. So my name is Gavin Jones. I'm the director of SABRE, which is the BRE's new certification scheme for security in the built environment. It's an acronym for Security Assurance by BRE. That scheme was launched in December. And it's part of a very long history of our work in the security industry, where we've been involved in standards writing, testing, certification, and so on. We're very pleased that you've all come to meet with us today when we're talking about a very important issue, which is the role of planning in delivering a sustainable, secure built environment. So we've got, as I mentioned, we've got a group of distinguished speakers with us today and a range of stakeholders from the built environment, people tasked with delivering a secure built environment. We've got planners, we've got designers, we've got traffic engineers, we've got security consultants, manufacturers, you name it. Everyone involved is represented in this room, and we're hoping that will allow us to have a very constructive conversation and ensure that from today we take away some ideas on how we can improve the way that planning is used to deliver better security outcomes. What I've got to do before we start talking a bit more about the event is housekeeping. So an important issue, fire escapes are located at the back right-hand side of the room and through the doors that you entered. If we do hear the fire alarm, there's no planned drills, so it is likely that we will need to leave the room. So if you make your way outside, if you use the back door, if you could turn left and head to the square in the middle, and similarly, if you use that door, just head to the square in the middle of just outside the front of the building where you entered, and that's where we'll use the assembly and check that everybody's out. In terms of the refreshments for the day, the area where you've gathered there this morning for registration, lunch and breaks will all be served in that area. We have our exhibitors in that space who are obviously showcasing a range of products and solutions for security. We've got a good mix of people who provide physical security solutions, technical solutions, and so on. So I would ask you to spend a bit of time speaking to these guys, because they do have some innovative ideas to help you, and obviously they've made this event possible. Toilets are located just outside the main door there on the right-hand side if you need to use them. We will, on 3:30, move to the Innovation Park for the drinks reception. So if you follow some of the BRE staff that you'll see around the room, we'll go out this entrance here and then we'll head over to the Innovation Park, where you'll also have a chance to look at some of the latest technologies which are being deployed in building smart homes and so on. So hopefully you'll find that interesting as well. So why are we here today? The objectives are primarily to understand the role of planning in reducing crime and fear of crime, and how planning can be used to reduce vulnerability and increase the resilience of high-risk sites. These terms are taken primarily from the National Planning Policy Framework, and we're privileged to have Steve Quartermain, CBE, with us this morning, who's the Chief Planning Officer for the Department for Communities and Local Government, and he will talk a lot more about what policies are in place and what we're supposed to be doing in terms of security and the planning process. Secondly, and very importantly, we want to see how we can achieve more in terms of security from the planning system. It's very difficult to get new policies in place through the UK government at the moment because of cost cutting and austerity and so on. But there is a lot more we think that we can do with the existing mechanisms that we have in place. And primarily that will be achieved through an increase in public-private partnership. You know, security has very much been the domain of police officers in the past. But the private sector has a lot of capability, a lot of answers that can be used and deployed, and we need to be making better use of the private sector. So we'll talk extensively about that today. So where have we got to? Well, as I mentioned, we've got a national policy. We've got the Crime and Disorder Act that requires local authorities to address crime and fear of crime in everything that they do in terms of their operations as local authorities. We've got design guidance. As I say, we've got a wealth of experienced and professionally qualified people in the industry. People have been talking about the role of the built environment in securing our lives for a very long time, since probably the 60s and 70s, and some of the concepts of natural surveillance, territorial reinforcement and so on is nothing new, and these have been deployed for a long time in terms of kind of, I'd call the more volume crime issues. Life has got a little bit more complicated with terrorism. A lot of those solutions that we've been using for many years can be used to help us resolve those issues. But I think because of the complexity, the pace of change in tactics, change in targets, we have to think a little bit harder. And it does require a group of specialists to be involved in the process to find some appropriate and proportionate solutions. Where do we need to get to? I think if you're a developer or an end user, it's absolutely important that there's a clear expectation on what you're expected to do in terms of your role for protecting your development, the space that you're creating. And I think what developers always crave for, like any business, they hate uncertainty. If they're going to develop in central London, they want to know what the expectation is. If they're going to develop in Nottingham or in Glasgow, they'd expect some consistency in what they're being asked to do. So I think we need to address that issue. Also, anyone that's operating a building or developing want to know that security is affordable, that the expertise they require is available, and they want to know that they have a low risk in using specialists. They don't want to find that they're being asked to spend money that isn't delivering effective security results in their premises. So there's a lot of challenges on helping those people de-risk the procurement process. And the other thing to realise, as I mentioned, that planning is a very important part in finding effective security solutions, but it isn't the be-all and end-all of it. You can, in planning, have interventions that form a foundation for effective security in the use of buildings, but we do have to think of the entire life cycle, and that is design and operations and management of space. It's very difficult for a planning officer who is only seeing a very small snapshot of a development, that very early stage, to think of all of the possible changes that might happen over time with the way that the threat develops and all of the potential options that need to be deployed in terms of management of space, the resources of operational security and so on. So they've got a very difficult role, and they're wearing lots of hats. You know, they're not just thinking about security, they're thinking about sustainability and energy and water use and so on, transportation, all of those other issues. So we can't say that this is the planner's principal role. We all have to work together to find effective solutions. So how are we going to address today's objectives? Hopefully you can see the agenda. There is one on every seat, so hopefully you've got that. We'll open up with session one, which is looking at security development and the planning system. We've got a mix of stakeholders from UK government, the private perspective and an academic perspective on security and the planning system. I think that's going to be a really interesting session. Then we'll move into literally how you use plan making and good design to deliver effective security. And with us today we have Paul Seddon, who's going to talk about the work that Nottingham City Council has been doing in the area of crime prevention and protective security. And we've got the police who are joining us and will give their perspective along with the private sectors. As we move into the afternoon, we've deliberately put in a couple of discussion sessions. As I said, the answers for security in the built environment are from a number of stakeholders. This isn't about BRE telling everybody who's come here today what the answers are. This is about a collective discussion. So we've deliberately put an hour in the agenda today where we'll all have a chance to provide our views. And we will take the outcomes from today and present those to DCLG and through a working group, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. This afternoon, we will have a chance to understand how standards can be used to deliver better outcomes. This is where BRE and our work from the Loss Prevention Certification Board, this very much is our bread and butter. We have offerings to help people deliver better buildings from BREEAM, and we've been operating that for 25 years, and there's some lessons I think we can learn from that in terms of security. And then we're going to talk a bit about SABRE at the end of the day. And then, of course, we have our drinks reception. So that's enough from me. Welcome again, and we're going to dive straight into session one, which is security development and the planning system. I'd like to welcome to the stage Steve Quartermain to give our keynote speech for the day.